Every relationship has an unspoken battlefield. Few men see it, fewer understand it. Women, like all humans, wield social and emotional influence instinctively. Subtle emotional pressure is often unrecognized. John, a 34-year-old architect, realized his fiancée's constant, "Do you really care?" questions weren't about concern. They were a test of compliance. Each word, tone, and pause was calibrated to gauge his willingness to bend. Emotional compliance is often invisible until it dominates your decisions. But why does this invisible influence feel like betrayal when you finally notice it? What you see isn't always what you get. Some truths are negotiable. Intermittent reinforcement, the same technique that keeps slot machines addicting, is used subtly in human interaction. Praise, warmth, or attention is given selectively to maintain control. Maria compliments David only after he anticipates her unspoken desires. When he fails, her distant silence enforces learning. This small-scale conditioning creates long-term patterns of self-monitoring and self-doubt. Selective validation shapes behavior more effectively than confrontation. This invisible weapon isn't just praise and silence, it's far darker than it appears. Words are sharper than knives. They can wound without leaving scars. Language is often used as a testing ground. Subtle questions carry implicit consequences. Statements appear innocent but measure loyalty, empathy, and submission. Laura repeatedly asked Peter, "Do you think my friend is prettier than me?" The question isn't about beauty, it's about control, testing Peter's honesty and willingness to prioritize her emotional comfort. Every question is not a question. Sometimes it's a probe, but tests alone don't explain the power behind this silent weapon. Its true strength lies in how men respond. Guilt is a currency most men spend unknowingly. Emotional manipulation operates through guilt and obligation. When a man prioritizes truth over comfort, he faces invisible penalties. Michael tells his partner that he disagrees with her plan to move across the country. Her tears, silent treatment, and passive-aggressive comments push him toward compliance. He starts questioning his own logic. Guilt can be more binding than any rule, but the weapon reaches its apex when combined with power over attention. Humans crave attention. Manipulate it, and you steer behavior. Modern relationships often operate on an attention economy. Withdrawal of attention or selective engagement functions as leverage, shaping responses and decisions. Sophie only responds to Matt after he performs small acts of compliance. Over time, he becomes attuned to invisible cues, perpetually seeking her acknowledgement. Control attention, and you control choices. But why do intelligent men, fully aware of these patterns, still fall prey to them? Men often lose before a conversation even starts. Hedonic adaptation and anticipatory stress. Humans overestimate negative outcomes and adjust behavior to avoid hypothetical conflict. This subconscious pattern amplifies compliance. Mark imagines his girlfriend's reaction to a minor disagreement and preemptively softens every statement, creating a loop of self-censorship. He wonders why he never expresses himself authentically. Fear of emotional turbulence is the architect of silence. Yet silence alone does not break the cycle. The silent weapon's mastery emerges in predictability. Women unconsciously or consciously leverage patterns in behavior, testing limits, predicting reactions, and guiding decisions without overt confrontation. The pattern becomes almost invisible to the victim. Alex realized his partner's questions always followed the same trajectory. A casual remark, an emotional test, a subtle reward or withdrawal. The predictability shaped his responses before he even noticed. Once recognized, the effect is terrifying. You understand the system but are trapped in its mechanics. Awareness alone isn't enough to escape. Emotional intelligence becomes a double-edged sword. Awareness of manipulation gives clarity, but also deepens frustration. You see the strings, yet removing your hand from the puppet is agonizing. The silent weapon exploits the deepest human needs: connection, affirmation, and avoidance of conflict. No physical fight, no raised voices, just a strategic dance of cues, tone, and withdrawal. Trust is leveraged against itself. When men attempt to assert independence, subtle sabotage appears. Humor turns sharp, attention becomes scarce. praise conditional. Subtle punishments reinforce compliance without overt aggression. Jonathan tried setting boundaries with his partner. The response was not anger, but disappointment expressed in quiet disapproval. He found himself apologizing to maintain peace, realizing the battle wasn't loud. It was psychological. The ultimate danger is internalization. Men begin to police themselves. Every choice, word, and desire is filtered through anticipation of emotional response. Attachment theory explains part of this. Men with anxious attachment are particularly susceptible, seeking approval at all costs. Avoidant attachment can resist, but often leads to detachment and emotional shutdown. Emotional influence, when invisible, feels omnipresent. Yet this silent weapon is not inherently malicious. Many women employ it unconsciously, guided by social conditioning, survival strategies, and relational instincts. The danger arises when awareness is absent. The final realization comes slowly. Freedom from this silent influence requires clarity, boundaries, and disciplined attention to internal states. Control over one's own reactions is the first step toward liberation. The last rule is paradoxical. The less you chase approval, the less power the weapon has. Sam stopped preemptively soothing his partner's moods, ceased apologizing for imagined slights, and began observing without immediate reaction. The subtle tension didn't disappear, but its hold weakened. Liberation doesn't come from confrontation, but from strategic detachment and self-awareness. Men who endure emotional influence unexamined become actors in a play directed by invisible hands. Men who observe, reflect, and define boundaries reclaim authorship of their lives. The silent weapon, subtle, pervasive, and often unconscious, loses its potency when met with awareness. Control is a shadow, awareness is light. The question remains, once you see the strings, will you continue dancing, or will you finally step off the stage?